The Tale of Adunola and Obafemi. Once upon a time, in the bustling town of Ibadan, there lived a woman named Adunola. Adunola was deeply in love with Obafemi, her brother Adebayo's closest friend. Obafemi and Adebayo had met years ago while working as laborers at a construction site. They shared a bond that grew stronger with each passing day, despite the hard and humble beginnings they faced together. Obafemi, Adebayo, and their friends were poor bricklayers who took on menial jobs around the town to survive. One sunny afternoon, as they were working at a construction site, Adunola came by to drop off lunch for her brother. Obafemi was captivated by her beauty and grace, unable to take his eyes off her. He admired her greatly and decided that he wanted to marry her. Obafemi confided in Adebayo about his feelings for Adunola, but Adebayo was not pleased. He could not bear the thought of his friend and his sister together and told Obafemi to keep his distance. However, Obafemi could not get Adunola out of his mind. He decided to approach her secretly and confessed his feelings. To his delight, Adunola soon developed feelings for him as well. As time went on, their bond grew stronger, and Adebayo noticed the closeness between his sister and his friend. He warned Adunola to stay away from Obafemi, but she found it difficult to comply, as she was already deeply in love with him. One day, Adunola spoke to Obafemi, who proposed to her on the spot. She stood there in shock, unable to believe her eyes, but she accepted his proposal. When Adebayo heard about their engagement, he was furious and told Adunola to call off the wedding. However, Adunola was determined and informed her brother that she was deeply in love with Obafemi. Adebayo decided to pay Obafemi a visit to warn him to stay away from his sister, but Obafemi was resolute. He professed his love for Adunola and pleaded with Adebayo to allow him to marry her. Seeing the seriousness in his friend's eyes, Adebayo warned him never to hurt his sister, or he would have to deal with him. Obafemi promised to treat Adunola well, and they were married shortly afterward. They were deeply in love and spent most of their time together. However, as weeks turned into months and months into years, Adunola began to see her husband's true colors. She never knew how heartless Obafemi could be until he started making a lot of money from his business dealings. As Obafemi's business flourished, he became increasingly focused on accumulating wealth. Unfortunately, his success brought about a change in his character. He became stingy and controlling, especially towards his wife, Adunola. He accused her of being wasteful and ungrateful, withholding money and support from her. Adunola lived like a beggar in her own home as Obafemi not only withheld money from her but also began locking up food and other household items in his room, leaving her to starve. He even went as far as locking up the bathing soap and toothpaste, forcing Adunola to bathe with washing detergent and brush her teeth with salt. This was a horrifying time for Adunola, who lived like a pauper in her own husband's home, constantly reminded of the fact that her family was poor and wretched. Obafemi would tell her that he would never have married her if he had known how wealthy he was destined to become. He treated her with disdain, and even when she became pregnant with their first child, he showed no compassion. He continued to lock up all the food items in the house, forcing her to move from house to house, begging for food. Adunola became the topic of discussion among her neighbors, who could not understand why a woman whose husband was so rich would beg for food. They called her greedy and refused to give her food, knowing how generous her husband was to those around him. Adunola stayed hungry for days, drinking only water. Her husband would return late at night after eating out and doze off without considering that his pregnant wife had not eaten. One morning, while Adunola was moving from one house to another begging for food, she collapsed to the ground. She was rushed to the village healer, who informed her that she had lost her pregnancy. Adunola remained in the healer's hut for days, but her husband never cared to come around. A few days later, she returned home to find her husband's younger sister, Famileo, eating a huge plate of rice in her home. Adunola was shocked, as she could not remember the last time she ate food in her own house. She dashed into the kitchen to prepare some food for herself when Fomileo walked in and poured her food away, warning her never to touch anything in the house without her permission. Fomileo revealed that her brother had put her in charge of the entire house and that Adunola must seek her permission before touching anything. Adunola stood there, frozen, as her sister-in-law talked to her like a child. She returned to her room and wept, wondering what she had ever done to her husband to warrant such humiliation. When Obafemi returned, Adunola pleaded with him to forgive her if she had ever done anything wrong, but he dismissed her, saying he had more important things to worry about. He told her that if she was so unhappy in his home, she could leave for her own sanity. Adunola cried herself to sleep and woke up the next morning to find that Fomileo had invited a friend to live with them. Adunola watched in disbelief as her husband welcomed his sister's friend, Doyin, with open arms. Doyin roamed freely in Adunola's house, taking liberties that Adunola herself was denied. She acted as if she owned the place, and it wasn't long before she started disrespecting Adunola. The constant humiliation, lack of food, and emotional abuse became unbearable for Adunola. She lived like a stranger in her own home, constantly insulted by Fomileo and Doyin, who spent more and more time with Obafemi. One day, Adunola walked in on her husband in a compromising position with Doyin. She confronted them, and Obafemi, instead of feeling remorseful, beat Adunola up in front of Doyin, calling her jealous. He told her that Doyin was the woman she could never be, even if she tried, and that he regretted ever marrying such a poor and local woman. Adunola packed her bags and left his home, unable to believe how much she had endured just to remain married to a man who cared less about her. She returned to her brother Adibeo, who was shocked to see how emaciated she looked. Adunola burst into tears and told her brother everything, how she lost her pregnancy due to starvation, how Obafemi beat her up, and how he humiliated her in front of another woman. Adibeo was furious and confronted Obafemi, demanding an explanation for his sister's mistreatment. Instead of showing remorse, Obafemi called a thug to beat Adibeo up, leaving him scarred and injured. He warned Adibeo to never come close to him again because they were not of the same class. Adibeo returned home and comforted his sister, who gradually healed from the trauma. Obafemi went on to marry Doyin, whom he showed off to the entire town. She was the kind of woman he always envisioned himself with, a sophisticated woman he could take in front of his rich friends without any worries. Obafemi spent his money on her and bought her everything she ever needed. Fomileo was delighted to see her friend and brother together, and they often talked about how terrible a fit Adunola was for Obafemi. Several months later, Obafemi's world began to crumble. The men he trusted with his money to supply goods to his business partners ran away with his entire fortune, leaving him penniless. Obafemi searched everywhere for them, but they were nowhere to be found. His business struggled, and he was unable to fulfill orders, creating big problems with his business partners. Desperate to save his business, Obafemi sought help from his wealthy friends, but they turned their backs on him and mocked him. Doyin continued with her incessant demands, not caring about Obafemi's struggles. She nagged him at every opportunity, calling him useless for being unable to provide for her needs. As months went by, things became worse for Obafemi, who sold his mansion and began to live in his old hut. Unable to withstand the suffering, Doyin abandoned him and moved on with her life, leaving him alone with Fomileo. Obafemi could not believe how quickly things had changed. He visited a powerful seer, seeking answers. The seer revealed that Obafemi was the author of his misfortune. She told him that Adunola was his good luck charm, her pure heart and kind spirit had attracted prosperity to his life. However, his evil actions had pushed her away, taking her blessings with her and making it impossible for him to prosper. Obafemi could not believe his ears. The woman he treated with so much disdain turned out to be the reason for all his wealth. Filled with regret and desperation, he decided to seek Adunola's forgiveness, hoping to restore his fortunes. He arrived at Adibeo's hut but found no one there. He was told that Adebayo and Adunola no longer lived there. They had moved to a wealthy part of town, thanks to Adunola's newfound prosperity. Obafemi was astonished to learn that Adunola had become a successful businesswoman. Her kind heart and hard work had attracted blessings and opportunities, leading to her and Adebayo living comfortably. Determined to make amends, Obafemi sought out Adunola. When he finally found her, he fell to his knees, begging for forgiveness. Adunola listened quietly, her heart heavy with the memories of her suffering. She had moved on from the pain he caused her, focusing on building a new life for herself and her brother. Adunola looked at Obafemi and said, "I have forgiven you, but I cannot forget what you did to me. I am no longer the woman you used to know. I have found my strength, my peace, and my prosperity without you. You must now live with the consequences of your actions." Obafemi was crushed by her words but understood that he had no one to blame but himself. He left, realizing that the blessings he once had were lost forever. Adunola, on the other hand, continued to thrive, her heart full of gratitude for the lessons she had learned and the new life she had built. She and Adebayo remained close, supporting each other through thick and thin, their bond unbreakable. As for Obafemi, he returned to his humble beginnings, working as a laborer once again. He lived a life of regret, knowing that he had squandered the greatest gift he ever received. The town of Ibadan remembered his story as a cautionary tale, a reminder that true wealth lies not in riches but in the kindness and love we show to others. I hope you enjoyed the tale. If so, please like the video, comment, share it with your family and friends, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell for more enchanting tales like this one. Goodbye.